Some men build empires on steel and stone. Others, they build them on fear. This is the story of a man whose empire was built on both, and how in one single day, his death set it all on fire. It didn't start with a whisper. No. It started with the roar of burning trucks, the scream of automatic weapons, and the sudden, terrifying paralysis of an entire nation. This was the day the ghost finally died, and his army of demons was unleashed.
You see, from the tourist-packed beaches of Puerto Vallarta to the industrial heartland, the message was brutally, savagely clear. The king was dead, and his kingdom was now at war with the world. 74. And that was just the initial body count. The very first price paid in the absolute inferno that followed the death of one man, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, a name whispered in fear, El Mencho.
But see, to really understand the fire, you have to understand the man who built the pyre. A man who clawed his way up from dirt-poor poverty to become one of the most feared narco-terrorists on the entire planet.
His journey, well, it reads like a blueprint for brutal ambition. He started as an avocado farmer in Michoacan, an elementary school dropout. Then a petty criminal, doing time in the U.S., a deported nobody. He became a soldier in someone else's war, until he decided to start his own, forging the now infamous Jalisco New Generation Cartel right from the wreckage of his rivals. And you have to understand, El Mencho didn't just create another cartel. No, he built a paramilitary corporation, a narco-state with its own army, its own twisted foreign policy, and a business model that held the global supply of synthetic death right in the palm of its hands.
This was never just about drugs. It was a diversified portfolio of pure crime. El Mencho seized control of the ports where the precursor chemicals poured in from Asia, making himself the gatekeeper of a modern-day fentanyl Silk Road. He siphoned oil directly from state pipelines. He laundered money through, well, everything. Illegal mining, timeshare fraud, weaving his illicit empire into the very fabric of the global economy.
And this just perfectly illustrates his philosophy. Absolute, unrestrained violence. This was open war against the state. In 2015, his men used a rocket-propelled grenade to shoot a military helicopter right out of the sky. They deployed weaponized drones, rolled out armored monster trucks, and even tried to assassinate Mexico City's police chief in broad daylight. There were absolutely no limits.
$15 million. That was the price the United States government put on his head. For the DEA, he wasn't just another target. He was public enemy number one. A ghost they have been hunting and failing to catch for over a decade.
For years, he was a phantom, completely protected by a wall of corruption, intimidation, and fierce, bloody loyalty. But every king, has a weakness. And El Mencho, he made one fatal mistake. After all the years of electronic surveillance, after all the satellites and all the high-tech drones, the breakthrough wasn't technological at all. It was human. A simple tip coming from inside the inner circle of one of his romantic partners. It was an old-fashioned betrayal, and it sealed his fate. And that single tip led to a new and very deadly synergy. American intelligence provided the coordinates, the drone imagery, the whole target package, but it was Mexican special forces who would put boots on the ground and who would ultimately pull the triggers. Before dawn, they moved in. At 6:15 a.m., a silent infiltration on foot. By 6:45, that silence was shattered by a 45-minute firefight. At 7:30, El Mencho, the untouchable king,
was on the run, fleeing into the woods like a hunted animal. An hour later, he was critically wounded, and by 10 a.m., while being flown to Mexico City, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was dead. But the death of the king, it didn't bring peace. It was a signal, a pre-planned order to burn the country to the ground. It was the final, terrifying act of a dead man's vengeance.
The cartel's response was a terrifying masterpiece of chaos. Within hours, nearly 250 narco-blockades, using burning vehicles to seal off highways and city streets, had paralyzed 20 of Mexico's 32 states. They attacked infrastructure, they sparked a prison break freeing 23 inmates, and they engaged in firefights that left dozens dead on both sides. This wasn't random violence. It was a coordinated nationwide insurrection.
And this victory, well, it came at a terrible price, paid for in blood. At least 25 members of Mexico's National Guard and security forces were killed in that firestorm. They got the king, yes, but his army exacted a very, very heavy toll.
You see, El Mencho's greatest strength was also his cartel's greatest weakness, his personal, centralized control. He was the cartel, and with him gone, a massive power vacuum has ripped open. The empire, once held together by his will alone, now threatens to shatter into warring factions, each one fighting for a piece of his bloody throne.
And this explosion of violence, well, it couldn't have come at a worse time. With the world's biggest sporting event, the FIFA World Cup, just months away, Mexico now faces a crisis of both security and perception on the world stage. 100,000. That's the number of soldiers, police, and security forces Mexico now plans to deploy just to secure the World Cup. Think about that. An army to protect a football tournament from the ghosts of a dead man's empire.
The operation to kill El Mencho was a stunning tactical success. There's no doubt about that. But it may have unleashed a strategic nightmare. It answered one very important question, but it leaves a far more terrifying one in its place. The king is dead, but in the violent, fractured world he left behind, who or what will rise to claim his bloody throne?